when I was 60 years old. My husband Aaron, without any warning, swallowed sleeping pills. When I found him, he was wearing the suit I had ironed, lying neatly in bed, with a faint smile on his lips. For a moment, I didn't know the reason for his suicide, until I found a letter in his arms. Chapter 01. My wife, Sandra, has fulfilled my lifelong promise, allowing our child to walk upright and proud in this world. Now, our son has a successful career, and our grandchild is about to be born. I have no more worries. Separated by life and death, true love cannot be held in my arms. I can finally free myself from this unfortunate marriage. This was Aaron's handwritten letter, with sharp strokes, each word cutting to the heart. The wife in the letter wasn't me. The true love wasn't me. The source of his misfortune, though, was me. I looked at Aaron, lying peacefully on the bed after more than 30 years of marriage. It seemed I never really knew him. I gave up most of my life for him, raised his son with my own hands. He was fulfilled, without regrets, and now he was dead, not even bothering to pretend. At 60, I suddenly discovered I had been deceived for half my life. I had become a joke. Chapter 02. I should have realized it long ago. The lack of love could be seen in every detail of our marriage. Aaron, claiming to be a germaphobe, slept in a separate room, with separate tableware. Except for conversations about our son, he never cared about my affairs, nor did he share his daily life with me. Later, when he had issues in that department, our physical relationship ceased altogether, but I never dared to complain, because I had a malformed uterus. I couldn't conceive, leaving Aaron without a biological child. In those days, a woman like me, who couldn't have children, being beaten, cheated on, or divorced was considered normal. In my 20s, when I thought my life was over, it was Aaron who firmly held my hand and told me it didn't matter. We could always adopt. I was grateful for his unwavering support, and I devoted myself to taking care of him and our adopted son. He worked in chemical research, and his job often required him to relocate. For that, I gave up my job at the newspaper and took care of the household. When he was struggling, I survived on hard cornbread, giving all the vegetables and meat to him and our son. For 3 years, I didn't buy a single new piece of clothing. To this day, they both still think I enjoy eating coarse grains, don't care for meat, and prefer wearing old, soft clothes, finding joy in mending them. Sometimes I did feel wronged, but thinking about what I owed Aaron, I could only sigh quietly. In my heart, I always held on to a small hope that when we grew old, we would live harmoniously with our children around us. But after enduring for so long, what I waited for was Aaron's freedom. I wanted to scream and cry. I wanted to yell and curse, but the weight of half a lifetime was too heavy, pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. I collapsed on the floor, like a fish drowning, my mouth wide open, yet unable to utter a single sound. Chapter 03. I don't know how long it has been. Light outside shifted and flickered, and a single tear fell onto my hand. I snapped back to reality. My gaze drifted to the old wooden chest under Aaron's bed, the one with a lock. It was his sacred privacy, off limits to me. But now, I grabbed a fire axe and, without hesitation, broke open his private world. Inside were stacks of handwritten letters, thick and many. Some were yellowed with age, others worn and creased from being handled repeatedly. I knew these letters would be like sharp blades, cutting me to pieces. Yet, my hands trembled as I stubbornly began opening them one by one. My wife, Sandra. My wedding is next month. To ensure there will be no other children after marriage, I had a vasectomy today. In this life, I will only have one child. Luis, my wife, Sandra, forgives me for being with another woman. To be honest, it disgusted me, and I almost couldn't go through with it. I had to keep telling myself it was all for Luis. I must endure this for him. My wife, Sandra. I'm really fed up with Diana. Thankfully, I came up with a good solution. I told her I have a cleanliness obsession, so we sleep in separate rooms and use separate tableware. Only then can I bear to live with her. My wife, Sandra. It's been a year since I got married, and Diana still can't get pregnant. I arranged for a doctor to give her proof of infertility. She's too ashamed to face it. Soon, I'll suggest we adopt a child. My wife, Sandra. Great news! Our son has successfully been brought home. My wife, Sandra. Today I hurt myself. I smashed my genitals. Staying loyal to you. My wife, Sandra. My wife, Sandra. These words circled in my mind and ears. Impossible to shake off. I only felt dizzy and had ringing in my ears, with a suffocating feeling stuck in my lungs, sinking into my stomach, causing a spasm in my gut. Finally, I rushed to the bathroom and vomited violently. Chapter 04. I vomited until the world spun around me. I tried to stand up 3 times while leaning against the toilet before I finally managed to stand. Coming out of the bathroom, I looked around at this house I had lived in for over 30 years. Our bedroom, Aaron and I, was separated by an entire living room, completely divided. The dining table, which hadn't been tidied up, had mismatched dishes for the family, with each person's belongings strictly separate. Because Aaron claimed to be a germaphobe, our son followed suit once he was old enough to understand. Gradually, everything in our family became individually assigned, even the couch. No one ever touched anyone else's things. Once, I was so tired that I sat down on Aaron's couch, and he flew into a rage, so angry that he refused to eat dinner. I had to comfort him for hours and even take off the couch cover to wash it before he calmed down. Even today, when I found Aaron dead, I stood by the door for 5 minutes, calling him repeatedly, but he didn't wake up. I had no choice but to go in. Without realizing it, I had almost become the most boundary-conscious housekeeper in this home. At that moment, my phone rang. My daughter-in-law's pained voice came through. "Mom, I asked you to go home and get the bottle warmer. Why are you taking so long? I'm about to go into the delivery room, and Luis has to take a company conference call. I need you here to take care of me." Hearing her labored breathing, I felt a pang of sympathy. I opened my mouth several times before I could utter a hoarse voice. "Mom will be back soon. Hang in there. Don't be scared." After hanging up, my foggy mind cleared up a lot. I reminded myself that I am still a mother-in-law. Today is my daughter-in-law's delivery day, a big event. How can I let past entanglements from the older generation affect the children? Even if my adopted son is Aaron's illegitimate child, it's not his fault. How could he know that his father was such a two-faced man? He is the son I have raised with all my love and effort. He is my son, Aaron. Since you wanted to die for love, take your secret with that woman to the grave. I wiped away my tears and went into Aaron's room to clean up his letters, suicide note, and sleeping pills, erasing all traces of his suicide. It's better for our son to come home and find that he died suddenly. But as I was tidying up the drawer, I found Aaron's phone. Fearing he left something behind, I unlocked it, and there, I saw a scheduled email. The recipient was my son. Chapter 05. Suddenly, an overwhelming sense of dread enveloped me. Still trembling, I opened the email. "My son Luis. By the time you receive this email, your father will already be dead. Forgive your father for being selfish. Forgive me for not being able to endure your stepmother any longer. But don't grieve for me. To me, fulfilling my promise to your mother in this life has already brought me contentment." I read these cold lines of text in disbelief. The scene before me began to tremble. My fingers become stiff, even struggling to swipe the screen. So, Luis knew everything all along. He, his father, and his biological mother were the real family. Then what about me? What was the meaning of my half-life of nurturing him? I collapsed to the ground, unwilling to stop, and kept scrolling. What I found next truly made me feel as if I had fallen into an icy abyss. "Now that you will have a precious son and a successful career, there's nothing more I can do for you. I'll leave everything to you, sparing you the burden of caring for the elderly. As for the stepmother you despise, I've taken care of her too." I added a new biological poison to her insulin, and it's slow-acting. By the time it takes effect, your wife will have just finished her postpartum recovery. Your stepmother will make her final contribution and then die. At that time, the life insurance I bought for her will kick in, and you'll be the beneficiary. Diana has no relatives, and no one will investigate her death. Even if they do, the culprit will only be me. I will leave this world with all the blame, giving you a perfect conclusion. Finally, remember to take the letters locked under my bed and bury them with me alongside your mother. Chapter 06. In the scorching summer heat, a coldness rose from the soles of my feet, freezing me in place. It felt like my ears were in a vacuum, nothing could be heard. Suddenly, I remembered how, on Louis' birthday every year, both father and son would disappear for the entire morning. I recalled how, when Louis was little and ran away after I disciplined him, crying and shouting that he wanted to find his biological mother, I was the one who searched for him all night in the pouring rain. I thought of the time my daughter-in-law bought a bouquet of white chrysanthemums but couldn't explain clearly who they were for. Memories flashed through my mind like a revolving lantern. My thoughts were in chaos, yet I had never felt so clear-headed. After a long pause, I controlled my freezing body. Calmly, I found my medicine box, took out the tampered insulin, and replaced it with a new box to avoid suspicion. I took pictures of Aaron's suicide note, letters, and messages, then placed everything back where it was. I took the house deed, bank book, and all the jewelry. Finally, I even noticed Aaron's faint breathing. He wasn't dead yet. A cold smile played on my lips. I quietly closed his door and let him die. Chapter 07. Carrying Guilt and Wealth. I wandered like a zombie into the hospital. First, I went to the hematology department. The blood test results came out quickly: mild poisoning, causing a drop in platelet levels, but nothing fatal. Next, I went to the gynecology department to check on my uterine issues. Just after finishing my checkup, I ran into Louis. He seemed to be on a work call, casually walking over from the gynecology department. When he saw me, his irritated expression reached its peak. Rudely, he pointed at me, then gestured toward the delivery room, using his chin to impatiently urge me forward. It turns out that once you're clear-headed, you can see many things clearly. In the past, seeing him in his suit, always busy, I felt proud of him, and genuinely worried and empathetic for him, afraid of holding my child back. I willingly made sacrifices for him. But now, looking at how he treated me like a servant, thinking about all the things he hid from me, and how Aaron casually talked about poisoning me, I felt nothing but coldness in my heart. I ignored him and sat quietly on the bench, waiting for my test results. Louis's expression looked like he had swallowed a fly. He quickly ended his call and walked briskly over to me, rudely pushing me. "Mom, what's going on with you? Today is the day your daughter-in-law is giving birth, and instead of waiting in the delivery room, you're here in the gynecology department?" Chapter 08. I brushed off the spot where he touched me with disdain. "Of course. I'm here for a checkup." Louis rolled his eyes. "Mom, stop it. You're almost 60. Why are you even going to the gynecology department?" "Just because I'm 60. I can't go to the gynecologist? Just because I'm 60. I'm no longer a woman? You hear your mom is getting a checkup, and you don't even ask if I'm feeling unwell?" I felt a surge of frustration, and by the end, my voice cracked, filled with emotion. I remembered when Louis was 8 years old and got pneumonia, with a fever that wouldn't break. To take care of him, I stayed by his side day and night, without undressing, without sleeping properly for 2 weeks. I even missed the last chance to see my father before he died. Later, when Louis began to recover, I wanted to go back to attend my father's funeral. But Aaron, claiming he couldn't leave work, left our son in my care. I planned to take Louis with me to the funeral, but he was so delicate, unable to endure the bumps of the train ride. In the end, we didn't even leave the province and returned home. My brother was furious, and he cut ties with me, calling me an ungrateful daughter. He cursed me, saying I was abandoning my own family to raise someone else's child, and that one day I would face retribution. His words became prophecy. Thinking of the past, I lashed out at Louis with a raised voice. "Did I treat you with this kind of attitude when you were sick as a child?" I spoke loudly. People in the hospital cast disapproving looks our way. Louis, always concerned about appearances, cleared his throat and softened his tone. "Mom, You know that's not what I meant. It's just that your daughter-in-law is about to give birth. And I'm anxious. We can't manage at home without you. Can't manage without me? Yes. When they need a housekeeper, they can't do without me. After all, Aaron is busy with academics. Luis has his business meetings. And the in-laws are vacationing in the Maldives. I'm the only one left to serve. But what about after? I don't even have the right to keep living. I can't be a burden to my son. I have to trade my own life for insurance money for him. My heart ached painfully, and as I lowered my head, a tear fell onto my knee. Luis hesitated, about to ask something, when his phone rang again. This time, it wasn't work, because when Luis looked at the phone, he froze like a statue. Judging by the time, Aaron's scheduled message must have arrived. Chapter 09. Aaron had planned everything. If my daughter-in-law hadn't asked me to go home at the last minute, I should have been at the hospital, while my son would have returned home to deal with his father's body. I would have been completely unaware of his scheme, but fortunately, fate intervened and let me see it. Luis stood frozen in place, not moving for a long while. After a moment, it seemed he had processed his emotions, avoiding my gaze. He said, "Mom, I left an important document at home. I need to go back and get it." With those words, the last shred of hope in my heart shattered. Just moments ago, I had truly hoped that this child I had raised with all my love might stand by my side. Just this once. Even if he didn't reveal the truth to me, perhaps he could feel a hint of anger toward what his father had done. But he didn't. He was nothing more than an ungrateful child through and through. "Mom, you should go to the delivery room now. My wife can't be left alone right now." Luis, clearly preoccupied, urged me and turned to leave. At that moment, his phone rang again. I could hear my daughter-in-law's voice through the receiver. "Honey, I asked Mom to go home to get something, but she hasn't come back yet, and now I can't reach her. Do you know where she is?" She was in pain and sounded wronged. "I'm giving birth to a child for your family, and not one of you is here. I'm not having this baby anymore." Normally, in moments like this, my son would bend over backward to soothe his wife, but now he stood still, like a statue. He mechanically turned around and, trembling, asked me, "Mom, did you just go home?" My bloodshot eyes were the only answer I gave him. Luis turned pale, quickly hung up the phone, and staggered away in panic. Chapter 10. I sat in the gynecology department for 2 hours. Finally, I received my medical report. My uterus was perfectly normal. I clutched the report tightly, my mind filled with memories of the judgment and mistreatment I faced when I couldn't have children in my younger years, and the joy on my friends' faces when they had babies. I thought of the neighbor's daughter who always spent money recklessly, buying her mother designer clothes and bags, while my adopted son brought me his mother-in-law's old clothes. He still believed I liked wearing second-hand clothes, but he's in his 30s now, a smooth-talking business elite. Does he really not know that no one likes old clothes? He simply doesn't care about me. I was so lost in grief that I didn't notice Luis frantically rushing over. He cautiously asked, "Mom, why haven't you been answering your phone? You know Dad committed suicide, right? Why didn't you save him?" This barrage of questions only made me want to laugh coldly. I replied in a frosty tone, "How would I know? He wouldn't let me into his room." Luis was left speechless, but clearly, he felt relieved. Since I didn't enter the room, I naturally wouldn't have seen Aaron's letters, nor would I know about his scheme. So, Luis returned to his usual accusatory tone. "What's going on with you today? You don't care about your daughter-in-law giving birth, and you don't care about Dad's suicide either. You don't care about anything. Are you even my mom?" Ha, I really wasn't his mom. I shot back at him. "Are you really my son? You're only worried about your wife and your dad. Have you ever asked about me? Am I your mom, or just your family's maid?" I stared Luis down. "I've already gone through menopause. I can't have any more children. This ungrateful child standing before me is my only son. The only son I spent half my life raising with all my love and effort." Perhaps feeling guilty, Luis was speechless again, but only for a moment, before he exploded in anger. "Mom, have you had enough? Of all times, why can't you just hold off on your little illnesses?" Chapter 11. I looked at Luis in shock. How was he able to speak to me so self-righteously? When did this child I raised with my own hands become so rotten? Luis continued to prattle on. Mom, you need to reflect on yourself. Why didn't you know that your husband was going to commit suicide? Have you ever really cared about him? Haven't I? Of course I have. But Aaron and I had an invisible boundary between us. Whenever I crossed into his territory, he would get angry. If I touched his things, he would lose his temper. When I asked about his life, he would become impatient. Even when he was sick, asking a few more questions was wrong. Eventually, I was trained to keep quiet, to do everything in silence, without saying a word. Over the decades, this became the norm. I spoke coldly. I don't know why your dad committed suicide. Do you? Luis ran his hand through his hair. Mom, that's what you should be worried about. Everyone has a role in this society, and your role is being a housewife. Now's not the time for wild guesses. You know Dad hated it when you overthought things. Just go take care of him, and when he wakes up, apologize properly. He'll forgive you. I responded with a cool "oh." Inside, I felt a wave of disappointment. So Aaron wasn't dead after all? It seems Luis was the one who saved him. What a loving family they are. One willing to die for love, the other rushing to save a life. And me? I'm just the person who deserves to die. At that moment, Luis's eyes landed on my medical report. He snatched it from me and sneered. Let's see what kind of illness you have. Chapter 12. Luis finally understood what was written on the report. His face turned pale, and he struggled to control his expression. Mom, aren't you infertile? Is this report wrong? Now he was getting nervous, and he had slipped up. I had never told him that I was infertile. In fact, I had always told him that he was my biological child. I looked at Luis and asked, how did you know I was infertile? Maybe Dad mentioned it to me once. I asked him why I didn't have any siblings, and he probably just made something up because he was embarrassed. Later, I figured it was probably his issue. Luis's acting was poor, and his words didn't even make sense. Looking back, Aaron wasn't much of an actor either, but because I trusted him, I was blind, and that blindness ruined my life. As Luis stammered, his phone rang again, this time. It saved him. Aaron had woken up. Luis was genuinely overjoyed. He grabbed my shoulder roughly, urging me to go take care of Aaron. It hurt where he grabbed me, and I coldly shook him off. Luis's face darkened, but he kept his patience and tried to reason with me. Mom, I know you're overthinking things right now, but whatever Dad may have done to you, it's all in the past. You're both getting older. It's time to stop making a fuss. He's right. I am getting old. I won't make a fuss. I'll simply cut things clean and fast. Seeing that I wasn't responding to his soft approach, Luis tried the hard one. His tone carried a warning. Mom, I suggest you stop acting up. You'll still need Dad to take care of you in the future. If you don't show up now and Dad gets angry and divorces you, I won't have anything else to say. With that, Luis stormed off in anger. Chapter 13. The events of the afternoon had passed, and I had calmed down. I may be 60, but I am not without resources. Half of the property Aaron intended to leave to his son belongs to me. I gathered all the family assets, including Aaron's personal property. Then I called my nephew. Aaron didn't know that I had kept in touch with him all these years. Although my brother cut ties with me, I still followed their family's situation. Back then, when my brother injured his leg and couldn't afford to send his son to school, I sold my jewelry to cover his tuition fees. Coincidentally, my nephew was admitted to a university in my city. For those 4 years of college, I secretly worked as a cook for other families, earning money to support my nephew. Without Aaron knowing, my nephew is a grateful man, and he always remembers to greet me during the holidays. However, since Aaron didn't like visitors at home, I only saw my nephew a few times outside. Now, my nephew has become a well-established lawyer. I called him and told him everything. He was silent for a long time. Then, through gritted teeth, he said, Auntie, don't worry. I'll help you fight for your share of the assets, and I'll make sure those wicked people end up in jail. Hearing the concern in my nephew's voice, I silently shed tears. I had finally received genuine care. Only now did I realize how pitiful it was to rely on the occasional token gestures of concern from people like Aaron and Luis, which I had to endlessly work for. How foolish I had been, distancing myself from my true family for the sake of that rotten father and son, my own blood relatives. True to his word, my nephew arrived at the hospital an hour later. He first took me to the forensic department, where we submitted the poisoned insulin for testing. Then he took me to the notary office to officially divide the marital property. After a busy afternoon, my nephew took me out for dinner and insisted I come back to his place. I told him I wanted to go home one last time. He tried to dissuade me. Auntie, you shouldn't go back. That place is a den of vipers. What if Aaron tries to harm you again? I shook my head. There's one last thing I need to confirm. Chapter 14. As a mother, I still held onto a sliver of hope for Luis. If he secretly swapped out the poisoned insulin, showing even the slightest bit of care for me as his mother, I would have forgiven him. After all, he is the child I raised with my own hands. My nephew, feeling helpless, had no choice but to accompany me. When we arrived at the door, we heard voices inside. My nephew quickly stopped me and motioned for me to stay quiet. I copied him and pressed my ear against the door. Aaron had come back. Father and son were talking. Aaron's voice was weak, barely more than a whisper. I told you someone had tampered with my will, but you didn't believe me. Now look. Even the box under the bed has been pried open. Diana must have entered my room. My will is fine, but the letters in that box contain too much information. Diana knows too much. Luis sounded anxious. Dad, why did you have to write everything down in the will? This isn't the old days anymore. Who still writes letters by hand? Aaron coughed a few times in frustration. What do you know, you brat? Do you even understand the kind of relationship your mom and I had? If I hadn't loved your mother my entire life, do you think you'd be where you are today? Besides, your wife was supposed to be at the hospital with the baby. How was I supposed to know she would send Diana back home? Luis's voice softened. It was an accident, I admit. But Dad, wasn't this all because you tried to hide your plan to die for love? You only ever think about Mom. Have you ever thought about me? Luis's voice grew choked with emotion, and Aaron's voice followed suit, both of them crying as if they were the victims. I felt disgusted listening to them. If it weren't for my nephew gently patting my back to calm me down, I might not have been able to hold it together. After the father and son finally finished crying, Aaron suddenly asked Luis a question. Did you destroy the poisoned insulin? When I heard that, my heart jumped. Chapter 15. Luis sounded irritated. Dad, you arranged the whole insulin thing so perfectly. Why would I destroy it? You sent the email to me. Diana doesn't know anything about it. We'll just keep letting her use the poisoned insulin, and when she dies, we can split the compensation money. She's taken my mother's place for all these years. It's time she paid the price. Hearing such cruel words from Luis, I felt a chilling cold run through my body. How could the son of such a beast be anything but a monster himself? At that moment, I knew I had completely lost hope for this father and son. Inside, Aaron was silent for a moment before speaking. You're right. Diana is just a housewife. I overestimated her. I always knew she was curious about what was in my box. So what if she's seen it now? I deceived her, but I also provided for her all her life. Even if she regrets it, can she turn back time? She can't survive without me now. She'll just throw a tantrum. But once she accepts her fate, everything will be fine. Luis, still worried, said, but Dad, I think Diana's attitude is different this time. She didn't care about whether you lived or died. And she's ignoring my wife too. Dad, we're both respectable people. We can't let her make a scene. Aaron scoffed confidently. That's nothing to worry about. I know Diana too well. She loves me too much. Hasn't she always been the one to compromise and apologize? All I have to do is wait. Even if this time feels more serious and she's upset. It's just jealousy. I'll pretend to try to kill myself again, and she'll feel balanced. She'll go back to being our servant. Luis's voice was filled with admiration. Dad, I have to say, you're brilliant. You're the perfect example of what a man should be. Aaron let out a smug laugh. I know you don't fully believe me. But don't worry, in such a serious situation, I've made sure to have a backup plan. There was a cold, murderous edge to Aaron's voice. I'll use a stalling tactic for now. If Diana has any second thoughts, I'll just kill her again. Luis, hearing his father talk about murder, didn't hesitate. Instead, he clapped and praised him enthusiastically. Chapter 16. After hearing the conversation between father and son, I was frozen in place. It was my nephew who helped me leave. Even when we got into the car, my nephew was quietly wiping away tears. I followed suit, wiping away my own tears. I've been such an unworthy aunt, barely paying attention to him, and now I've burdened him with my troubles and caused him to share my pain. When we finished crying, my nephew took me to his home. He wasn't married yet, but his place was neat and tidy, and he had already prepared the biggest room for his father in advance. Now, he settled me into that room. As soon as we got home, he started working on the lawsuit. For the next few days, my nephew took time off from work to stay by my side, running around with me, dealing with everything. During this time, that father and son duo called me countless times, but I didn't answer a single one. Luis even sent me pictures of his newborn son, trying to soften my heart. But this child isn't related to me by blood, so why should I feel anything? I deleted the photos without a second thought. A few days later, Luis borrowed someone else's phone to call me. I thought it was a call from the court, so I answered without a second thought. It turned out to be Luis, launching into a dramatic performance. Mom, where are you? Can you stop making a fuss? Do you even know that Dad attempted suicide because of you? This time it was really dangerous. He's in the ICU. Dad left a handwritten note saying he knows he was wrong, that it took losing you for him to realize you're his true love. If you just come home, he won't dwell on the past anymore. We can all live happily as a family again. His voice was so loud, I held the phone away from my ear in annoyance. By the end of his speech, there was nothing of substance. I just responded with an indifferent "oh." Luis clearly wasn't expecting such a cold reaction. He paused for a moment, then forced a tearful tone. Mom, Dad wants to say something to you himself. He hung up and called me back on video. This time, I answered. I wasn't moved, I just wanted to see what kind of act they would put on next. Chapter 17. In the video, Aaron was lying on the hospital bed, hooked up to tubes. When his cloudy old eyes looked at me, they were filled with what he believed was deep emotion. In a weak voice, he began reminiscing about our past. Diana, the truth is, I liked you from the very first time you came to interview us at the office. But at that time, I was always thinking about the one who passed away. I couldn't see clearly. Later, I stubbornly held on to that. Never mind. I didn't realize until I'd lived most of my life that I still didn't understand it. When I think about everything I've done, I feel like killing myself. Diana, I had to die once to realize I really can't live without you. Please come home. Aaron gave a heartfelt performance, even managing to squeeze out a tear. As for me, I felt nothing but goosebumps. No emotion. I thought to myself, if you don't watch years of soap operas, you can't come up with lines this cringeworthy. 60 years old, still talking about love. This old man hasn't learned a thing in life. I wanted to say something, but my nephew had advised me not to startle them before we officially filed the lawsuit. So I stayed quiet, watching him perform intently. When Aaron ran out of lines, he finally realized that I wasn't moved at all. His cloudy eyes shifted, and suddenly, he leaned closer to the screen. In a cold, eerie voice, he asked, Diana, where are you right now? I want to see you one last time. The murderous intent in Aaron's eyes flickered through the screen, and I could feel it clearly. Startled, I quickly hung up the phone. That night, I had nightmares about Aaron and Luis, both wielding knives and cornering me, stabbing me again and again with vicious fury. Even when I woke up the next morning, my mental state was poor. I went downstairs in a daze to buy groceries, but as soon as I stepped outside, I was arrested by the police. Chapter 18. At first, I thought the police officers were there to help me, until they grabbed me by both arms. Panicking, I asked, Officers, why are you arresting me? The police explained, Ma'am, don't worry. Do you not know that you've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's? We received a report from your husband and son, saying you've been deceived and ran away with all the family's assets. It took us a lot of effort to find you. Don't worry. We'll take you back to your family now. I hurriedly tried to explain. I'm not sick. I left on my own. I want a divorce. Ma'am, people with the disease often don't realize they have it. Your son has already submitted your diagnosis, confirming that you have Alzheimer's. Of course. Another diagnosis. Aaron and Luis were up to their old tricks again. Had they not done enough already? Accusing me of yet another illness? I frantically tried to explain that I wasn't sick, but the police seemed to trust the diagnosis report more. One of them pointed to my nephew, who was being restrained, and said, "This is the person who's deceiving you. Your family wouldn't hurt you." Seeing my nephew in handcuffs made me furious, and I started struggling violently. A crowd began to gather, with some concerned people muttering, "Isn't this police brutality?" They pulled out their phones and started recording. The officers had no choice but to explain the situation. Taking advantage of the moment, my nephew leaned closer to reassure me. "Auntie, don't worry. Once we get to the police station, they'll do an evaluation to see if you're really sick. The police will give us justice. They're lying about something that can easily be disproven, which means they have other motives. We need to be prepared." I calmed down, realizing my nephew made sense, and cooperated with the police. Sure enough, after several hours, my nephew proved his identity as a lawyer and our familial relationship. I also cooperated, demonstrating that my mental state was sound. We then took the opportunity to file a report and formally accused Aaron and Luis of attempted murder. Chapter 19. When I walked out of the police station, I finally felt a sense of relief, as if a heavy weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Now, all that remained was to go with my nephew to the forensic agency to collect the evidence, and Aaron and Luis would be finished. But just as I stepped out of the police station, a shadow rushed toward me. Before I could react, Aaron's twisted, old face was right in front of me, and in his hand was a syringe. In that split second, I thought it was all over for me, but suddenly, a police officer rushed out, kicking Aaron to the ground with a flying kick. This old man had attempted suicide twice before, but this time, he couldn't stir up any more trouble. With a venomous look in his eyes, he glared at me and cursed, "Diana, you won't die peacefully. You conspired with outsiders to harm your husband and child. How could you turn on the child you raised yourself? You don't deserve to be called human." His shameless words made even the officers present roll their eyes in disgust. I had a lot of insults I wanted to hurl at him, but I didn't even know where to start. Saying anything to a monster like him was a waste of breath. My nephew picked up the syringe from the ground and handed it to the police, angrily saying, "Officer, I told you this old man wasn't up to any good, and here he is, attacking someone right in front of the police station." The poison in this syringe is probably the same as the one he put in my client's insulin. Now that he's caught red-handed, he'll face multiple charges. The police acted quickly, gathering all the evidence of Aaron's crimes. However, since Aaron insisted that his son knew nothing and that Luis hadn't directly participated in any criminal activity, only Aaron was arrested. 2 weeks later, Aaron's attempted murder case and my divorce case were heard together in court. Before the trial, Luis appeared as a witness. He intercepted me in the hallway, bringing up memories of his childhood, trying to rekindle my motherly affection. He pleaded for me to take less of the assets, to leave more for him, as he needed to raise his child. I found it laughable. In every situation, it was me making sacrifices for him. What had he ever done for me? Giving me leftover grains? Handing me his mother-in-law's old clothes? Don't even think about it. I'm not giving you a single cent. I pushed past him, heading toward the courtroom, but he lost control. He ran in front of me, shouting, "You've never worked a day in your life, so why should you get so much of my dad's money? Just for being a housekeeper? Have you ever thought about how you'll live the rest of your life? You're 60 years old. Who's going to take care of you when you're old? Are you expecting your nephew to do it?" Chapter 20. To this day, seeing Luis thrashing around in rage, I no longer feel any heartache. I only feel like laughing coldly. So what if I'm 60? It's never too late to turn things around. With all the evidence in place, Aaron's sentencing was without suspense. Forgery of medical documents, attempted murder, insurance fraud, and malicious deception, the combined charges earned him 30 years in prison. He'll die there, an old man in a cell. The judge also granted my divorce on the spot, since Aaron was at fault, and most of the assets were awarded to me. After the trial, Luis chased me down the street, screaming insults. It was nothing more than the same old complaints about me stealing what was rightfully his. I didn't hold back. Following my nephew's advice, I posted all of Luis's wrongdoings online. Luis's reputation quickly crumbled, and he lost his job. His wife left him, taking their son with her. As for me, I received an overwhelming wave of sympathy from people online, outraged by my story. They said things like, "She's just an old lady, let's all chip in a little bit and raise a pension fund for her." I declined their kind offers. I have enough assets to take care of myself, and I asked them to donate to those in greater need. But through this experience, I felt the warmth of strangers, much warmer than the coldness of my own family. I started my own live streaming channel, sharing my daily life as a retiree, and it's been well received. Next, I plan to start a series on traveling in a camper van. 60 isn't too late to begin a new career. Before setting off on my travels, I went to visit Aaron in prison. I told him that, years ago, I'd heard about his first love and had my suspicions about Luis's origins. Back then, paternity testing wasn't available, so I had a blood test done. Aaron is blood type O, and Luis is AB. They could never have been father and son. Aaron was the one who had been deceived his entire life. Aaron's pale lips trembled for a long time, and as he stood up, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. He muttered, Sandra, you've deceived me so bitterly." I didn't look back. As I walked out of the prison and into the sunlight, I chuckled. I lied. It seems that, compared to his supposed true love, he trusted me, the one who had been a fool for so long. More deception, after all, only requires belief. No matter how absurd the lie, it can be taken as truth if the listener believes it.